This is a normal Rocket League ball. And this is a small Rocket League ball. Recently, I have been wondering if there would be any benefit to training with a small ball in Rocket League. And at the end of this week, we will have the answer to that question. Starting rank for this challenge is 1525, or GC1 Div 3. It will be very interesting to see if this number trends more up or more down throughout this week. Starting with day 1, I went in without much of a plan. I figured I would just smack the ball around and go for the things I would normally do in free play. Initially, this felt rather strange as the small ball definitely has some slight odd behavior to it, but after 10 minutes of running around with the small ball, we were able to score quite a number of cool goals. Despite only playing with the small ball for 10 minutes, when I hopped into my first ranked game, the regular ball looked ginormous. I wasn't sure what to expect in this first game, but things started off very well. Unfortunately, this good feeling was very short-lived. Definitely not one of my finest games. I actually found myself to be playing quite hesitant and unsure of myself. However, the touches I was getting on the ball did feel quite good. So maybe there's something to this small ball idea after all. As I queued another game, I wanted to make sure that the small ball was not just being used at the beginning of a ranked session. I wanted it to be a staple of the ranked routine. So in between games, we went back into the custom match and continued to hit the ball around. And as we entered the second game, it felt like something clicked. It seemed like all of the touches I was going for were working out exactly as I wanted them to. And this grew my confidence in my gameplay. And I could not have asked for a better performance the rest of this session. This session finished with a record of 5-1, and I was very surprised by this initial result. But whether this was directly caused by the small ball usage or not remains to be seen. As we moved into day 2, I knew I wanted to come in with a plan for the training. If I was going to prove that using a small ball was actually beneficial, the whole system needed to have a bit more structure. A 15-minute warm-up or training period, where the first 5 minutes were spent hitting the ball around the field as fast as possible, in order to warm up our recoveries and feel for the car. After that, there was 5 minutes of aerial play. Air dribbles, double taps, making sure we are maintaining control of the ball in the air. Lastly, 5 minutes of groundwork. Dribbles, flicks, ground shooting, all of the things that we would want to warm up for every ranked session. With our 15-minute warm-up out of the way, it was time to see if the results from yesterday carried over to today. Spoiler alert, they did not. The first games of the day could not have gone worse. It felt like I was making every wrong decision possible. Now, obviously, using a small ball in training is not going to have an impact on your decision making. but it seriously felt like nothing was going right. After some initial, very difficult struggles, we did start to play better, but we were never able to achieve the flow state from the previous day. After 9 games, we ended up going 3-6. Obviously, this is not really what we want to be seeing, but I was definitely a lot more tired this day than I had been on the previous day, so hopefully after a good night's sleep, we'll be able to come back on day 3 and turn things back around. I think tomorrow I'm going to go back to the 10-minute warm-up of just hitting the ball around and going for whatever I want. At least from the first 2 days, this seemed to be the most beneficial system. So far, we have had 1 positive day and 1 negative day, so it will be very interesting to see which direction this challenge trends tomorrow. Day 3 has to be one of the strangest days of Rocket League I have had in recent memory. We hopped on and did our 10-minute warm-up of hitting the ball around, as I mentioned previously, but the ranked session that followed was just bizarre. In terms of our overall level of play, I thought it was rather good. Decision making was significantly better than it was yesterday, and we were making a lot less silly mistakes. In terms of touches on the ball, they also felt quite good, which, at the end of the day, is the overall goal of this experiment. I will state that at the end of the day, we did go positive again, albeit ever so slightly. After 11 games, we went 6-5, but how we got there was something else. In almost every game that we lost, we started out with a 2-goal lead, proceeded to throw that lead away, and even worse, most of those games then went to overtime, which we then lost. Honestly, it was a very difficult day mentally, even more difficult than the losses from yesterday. However, the bright side to all of this is if you are starting games with multi-goal leads and then losing in overtime, it is more than likely that you played well enough to win and things just didn't go your way. The record from today easily could have been so much better, and that is the idea we have to carry into tomorrow. In terms of changing anything that we are doing with the small ball, I plan to up the warm-up time to 15 minutes instead of 10 minutes. Then when hopping into ranked, the plan is to play 2 games with a normal free play session in between. Then after that second game, we will hop back in with the small ball for a little bit in order to reset the idea, and we'll see if that has any long-lasting benefits. Day 4 would begin what I would like to call the Rocket League depression cycle. And on day 4, this cycle presented itself with us just going back and forth with wins and losses all day. We never quite got into a groove on day 4. Again, the important thing that we need to look at though is our own personal play. And throughout the day, it was rather good. Touches felt clean, and I was able to do some great things with the ball. Even though the wins didn't really come through, our overall quality of gameplay was pretty high. Pretty much all of the games we lost were easily winnable, and if we played the same games over again, I feel we would have often been able to win the rematches. All in all, day 4 finished with a record of 7-8. Not ideal, but as long as we feel good about our own gameplay, I think this entire experiment will be deemed a success. Day 5 is when the depression cycle really got depressing. We hopped on, did our warm-up as before, hopped into ranked, and everything fell apart. We quickly lost 3 games right out of the gate, and even though a few wins came here and there, the wins were massively outnumbered by the losses. Despite the mental difficulties of constantly losing, something in the back of my mind was still feeling good about the way we were playing. It is important to remember that there are going to be days in Rocket League that you are going to be playing really well, but you will still end up losing the majority of your games, simply because you run into other players who are also playing really well. This is why it is so important to not associate your rank with the quality of your gameplay. Day 5 of this experiment was a prime example of that. Our gameplay felt really good. we were getting the touches we wanted on the ball, and we were quite dangerous to our opponents on an individual level. But at the end of the day, the quality of the gameplay from our opponents was just as good, which meant even though we played really well, we unfortunately lost way more than we won. After playing 12 games, we only managed 3 wins. It was at this point in the week that I knew that I had to make a conscious effort to not focus on the wins and the losses. The final 2 days were going to be purely about the quality of our gameplay. I wouldn't care if we deranked all the way to Champ 3. As long as our touches were consistent and high quality, I was going to be happy. And I could not be happier with our performance on day 6. After we finished the warm-up and hopped into ranked, we were simply on a different level of performance. Not only were we playing individually the best we had played all week, we were able to translate those solid performances into wins. And not just any wins either. Almost every win on day 6 was domination, where we would win by 3 goals or more. It felt like everything was coming together exactly as we had wanted, and we had finally broken out of the depression cycle. Or so I thought. After going 10-3 on day 6, we were pretty much right back to where we had started this experiment in terms of MMR. The system that seemed to benefit us the most with the small ball was 15 minutes of chasing the ball around, controlling it as quickly and consistently as I could. Then, after every ranked game, we would hop back in with the small ball for a full minute before queuing our next match. Doing this allowed us to refocus our touches on the ball in between every game, and on day 6, this system worked perfectly. Then came day 7. Day 7 is honestly a day of Rocket League that I would much rather forget. It started out as every other day had with our small ball warm-up, then into ranked with the same structure of utilizing the small ball in between every game. But today, things just weren't going right. It felt like we had stepped back in time to day 5 in terms of our ranked experience, losing our first 5 games of the day before we finally got a win. Unfortunately, this start definitely had an impact on how the rest of the day went, as when you find yourself that deep in an MMR hole that quickly, it can be incredibly difficult to pull yourself back out of it, and that was what we saw here. I played a lot of Rocket League on day 7, more than I probably should have, and that reflects in the MMR. I will say I am hesitant to call day 7 a day where I tilt queued, as even though wins were few and far between, I again felt very good about the way I was playing. Day 7 definitely could have been very different, especially if some things in those early games had gone a bit differently as well. But again, throughout the day we were able to score several highlight goals, and I felt we were much more in control of the ball than when we started this experiment. So even though I am now only barely holding on to GC1, being at 1441 MMR at the conclusion of day 7, I would like to think this entire experience has been worth it. So overall, there are a lot of benefits to training with a small ball. The main benefit being the fact that in order to move the ball around the field as you would like, you have to be extremely precise in your touches. Being more precise with your touches also leads to a lot less mistouches in-game. I can honestly say that since I began training with the small ball, the amount of mistouches I get in-game has dropped tremendously. Obviously, mistouches will still happen, but if you up your precision of your touches on the ball, mistouches become less and less of an issue. So now, the big question. Is this something that I think people should actually try? Should you incorporate this into your training routine? Do I think this will be helpful to general Rocket League players? I believe so. I think there is a lot of benefit that your average player can get from training with a small ball. I do not think it should be the only training that is done, but if you make it a small part of your training regiment, I think the small ball can have some pretty big impacts overall. I do hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you click that subscribe button right down below so you make sure you don't miss any future Rocket League content. Additionally, if you'd like to be more involved in this community, please consider joining my Discord link down in the description below. So thank you everybody so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. See you later, guys.